Okay, now I'd just like to open this up for any questions, comments, any points anybody like to share anything about the second Exodus? Yes, sir.
Well, I'd like to paint a little bit of what you guys have expounded on already. Should I just... okay, stand here. Yeah. The position of what you were saying about Yeshua versus David, most of the people that live here in Kansas City, for me, who came here about 22 years ago, I was brought here specifically by the hand of God for Kansas City because it has a primary part to fulfill that's associated with what you just spoke of. For most of you who live in Kansas City, you know that there's two things that are primary to Kansas City: Joseph Company and the Tabernacle of David. Mike Bickle started this movement about 33 years ago. Most people don't understand what that means, what the implications are to the Joseph Company, nor to the Tabernacle of David. So I'm going to try and paint a picture very briefly of what that looks like. The Joseph Company in this hour, I coin it as Schindler. Okay? We're coming in the time of Schindler's List. The same thing that happened to the Jews in any time of history. They were killed. You can look at it from the time of Moses and the Exodus, and he sent Moses down the Nile, and then the babies began to get killed. You can look at the time of when Joseph himself was sent into Egypt to deliver the people, once again brought into Egypt, and then Jesus himself, when the destroyer came, he was given a dream by his father to go into Egypt until he was brought back to be the deliverer. So we're living in the same time as any of the protocols of history. Nothing's different whatsoever. So now we're living in the times of the Exodus that you're talking about, the second. Because we had the one in the times of Moses, but you can look at it. They're all metaphoric. There was a time of Joseph in the Exodus when the children went to Egypt. There's a time with Jesus in the Exodus, and he had to leave and come back.
Gary?
Yeah. One real quick thing, and that is to pull what Jeff was talking about, and Rory and Katriel, all this stuff, to pull it all together. These are tactical things that you guys have been talking about. They're the details of how things are going to, trying to figure out all these tactical things. But keep in mind, as we wrestle with the tactics, what the strategic umbrella is over all this end time stuff. And that is that this is a love story. All this stuff is happening for one reason and one reason only. It's to bring about the production of a bride.
Amen.
For Yeshua that is equally yoked with him, who will sit side by side with him on his throne for all of eternity.
Amen.
Okay, that's what this is all about. And part of what's going on then is there's two great strategic moves right now in the earth that the Lord is orchestrating to help bring this about. One of them is the Hebraic Roots movement.
Amen.
Okay, this is one of the two end times strategies of the Lord, is to return people to the Word. And by doing that, what He's doing is these people are now going to express intimacy with Yeshua through obedience. Love me and keep my commandments. We're going to be that's what the Hebrew Roots movement is all about, is loving Him through keeping His commandments. There's another strategic move, and that is the prayer and worship movement.
Amen.
Right now. And one of the goals of the prayer and worship movement is to have intimacy with God through worshiping Him and through prayer and meditation on His Word. Well, what God is now going to do, I say God because my calling is to the church, and I'm trying to not lose that terminology yet. But what the Lord is doing is He's now going to merge these two things. You notice what we talked about over and over again is how much the Hebraic Roots movement needs prayer.
Amen.
To become more and more a part of it. Well, guess what? There's some of us that are going to the worship and prayer movement and say, you guys need the Torah. You need to come back to the Word. You need to show this love that you have is more than just sitting in prayer and meditation and worship and getting warm fuzzies. You have to know how to live it. You live it by keeping His Word, by being obedient to His Word. And so far, there's not been a lot of traction we've gotten with that. I mean, there's a lot of, people look at us and say, where's some wood? We're going to burn you at the stake, sort of thing. But The Lord's got his... But this is what he's going to do. We've had it confirmed prophetically through dreams and visions that the Lord is going to merge these two great movements into one. And what's going to happen then is God is going to use prayer, the power of prayer and worship, through keeping his commandments, not just physically, but spiritually, through the spirit of the commandments. And as we do that, there's going to be this incredible power that is going to be on this stuff, and we're going to then be able to be that bride that he's wanting to bring out of all this. Amen. And the rest of it is like details. Okay? Which details are very, very, very important. That's why I appreciate these guys, is because they're putting so much energy into the details. But that's what it's all about, folks. That's what it's all about. We're the bride, and we're going to be walking like it more and more as the days go by. All right?
Amen.
Okay.
Thank you. Yes, go ahead, Jake.
So, being I'm a woman, I'm a mother, so I think of things a little bit on the different side than maybe what all the men are talking about. So that's why you guys are intimidating me with all these things.
I'll go over here.
This is where I'm coming from, is that if we're headed for a great exodus, for one thing, we're very... we are fear-inspiringly made. Our bodies are made wonderfully. And with all this that we're talking about, you mentioned the makings of the world. Monsanto knows what they're doing. They're poisoning us. Amen. Simply. They're poisoning us. They don't eat their own food. They eat organically. They eat differently. The people that really know what's going on. And we are... Some of us are in ignorance, are eating things that are making us sick, and it's not going to help us be prepared for the greater exodus. And so if we really look into it, that's actually not even following Torah. We have to be really careful of what we're doing. So we really need to have a refinement within ourselves to really be clean and to be the bride, to follow Torah in a deeper level. And that would be with our foods, to be able to help us to... Our bodies as a temple, it needs to be clean and it needs to be functioning the way that Yah wants it to be functioning in order for him to deliver us.
Amen.
That's my message, short and simple, and I feel very called to help with that and to do that and to help people to be able to do that. With that, also with our mental facilities, with our thinking, we can have negative thinking that affects our health. And that's part of our temple. We need to have the spiritual thinking of our brains and our hearts to be clean, to have our temple to be pure, to be able to make it through the greater exodus.
You have to be strong.
So,
well, in Genesis it says that he created everything to multiply after its own kind. And Monsanto has taken that totally out of the picture. It's not multiplied after its own kind. Right. And if it's not, then it leads to destruction.
It's dead seed.
Dead seed, that's absolutely what it is. Just like homosexuality.
Yeah.
Which is part of the reason for homosexuality when you start to think about it, because of this food that we're eating. It's messing up our organs and our hormone system. Right. And so therefore then people don't even know what they are anymore.
That's right.
Yah wants us to clean it up.
Men need to get outside and chop wood.
And then use the wood.
Yeah.
Thank you. Anyone else want to share? I think Dad, but Jared?
Yeah, I just had a few questions. If either you or Rory has gotten any revelation as to the logistics of how we would traverse either the Pacific and or the Atlantic. And number one, and number two, what organizationally, like what the leadership, what authority would look like along the way. There's a Yehoshua raised up.
Okay, yeah, I got thoughts on that. Roy, you want to tackle that one briefly?
I honestly don't know, but I went to Mount Magazine, Arkansas, and I saw the hummingbird, and apparently they can beat their arms at about 200 beats per second. So if we flap our arms really hard, we might get somewhere. But
it's either going to be through land bridges. If there's tectonic changes, in Isaiah 24, it talks about the earth reeling like a drunkard, and great earth changes going on. It could be that God makes a land bridge. He does all sorts of stuff like that, and we actually take a trek. It could be that we go on some European cruise liner. It could be that we go by airplane. But I imagine that we're leaving after World War III, when the infrastructure is going to be devastated. So I'm not sure. I prefer the luxury cruise liner idea, but there's all sorts of ideas, even underground tunnels. So I don't know.
Yeah, that's interesting. Okay, so in Judaism they have a legend that the Israelites will dig, they will tunnel to come back. Now, so I do believe some of them will do that. We actually have the technology right now to do that. But as far as so you had 2 points. Number one regarding the migration, right? And then the second one was
How to traverse.
No,
authority, right? Okay. So the migration, dealing with the migration, according to the understanding that Elohim has given me thus far, I believe that first of all we have to stay south, because the winters are going to be so severe. Yeshua said, pray that your flight be not in the winter or on the Sabbath. Amen. You can survive during the summer. It's difficult, but it can happen. The winters, you can't be outside if they're really severe. You can't stay outside. So that's even more difficult than the harsh summers. So what we need to do is the tribes need to migrate south. And then from there, from the south, we will stay largely along the river lines, but we will stay away from the airports, away from the major cities, and definitely away from the FEMA camps. And so we need to have navigators, designated navigators who are aware of these locations, aware of the airports, the FEMA camps, where they are located, to help the leadership guide, and the prophets, when they're raised up, guide the camps. And so we'll be largely along river streams and or large creeks. And we may even take, if we're using vehicles, we may even take, roads, off-roads. We may go off-road, I'm not for sure. But the other thing is the tribes will migrate, I believe, toward the east coast. In the east coast, that is where the waters will part. And Elohim will raise prophets, the prophets will part the waters. Where that will be, I believe, actually, personally, I believe the tribes will have to go through the heart of Babylon, which is New York. The reason why I believe they'll go through New York is because Elohim will extract from New York a large remnant of brother Judah. And the brother Judah will he'll travel with the house of Israel. And so from New York, I believe that's where the waters will part, and Israel will bring judgment upon Babylon there, the heart of Babylon. Now, of course, I don't believe this is the exact judgment mentioned in Revelation. I believe this is this is like foreshadowing. It's a foreshadowing, but many people are going to think it's the judgment of Revelation chapter 17, 18, but it's not. It's only a foreshadowing. And I believe New York will be destroyed by the children of Israel. And from there the waters will be parted, and they will traverse, and from there we'll go into Europe, across an isthmus, an underground isthmus. Of course, during this time, the government's going to be at us. They're going to be able to bypass the darkness of technology, because in Ezekiel mentions that they'll be traveling through a dark time. During the second Exodus, it's going to be a time of darkness. There's going to be darkness on many levels. Physical darkness, spiritual darkness, technological darkness, and economic darkness. Technological darkness, which is why we have to migrate. And so because of our migration, the government's going to come after us. But Elohim will protect us if we're faithful. Now, regarding the authority structure, I believe what will be set up in the encampments is what I call, or it's called, I believe, is bureaucratic theocracy. It's when I say bureaucracy, please don't get me wrong. It's not a regular bureaucracy the what we think. It's a theocratic or a bureaucratic theocracy, which is where Yah reigns and the righteous rule. So but it's not a council of one man. It's a council of many men, and it's actually a hierarchy of councils. Like what Jethro said to Moses. You have your hierarchy councils, and these councils will help to govern the tribes. So, that's my belief. Any other comments?